Introduce myself. My name is Shannon Schock, and I'm the Director of Operations here with the St. Joe County Assessor's Office. I'd like to first thank you all for showing today. I would like to preface this by stating that Mr. Castellan, the County Assessor, will first give a brief statement to the press, and then afterwards there will be a short Q&A session. Mr. Castellan.
Good morning. So we called this press conference today because we're receiving a lot of questions not only from taxpayers but from the media. So we want to give a bit of information for the taxpayer and then of course for the media as well to make sure that we're putting out the right information to the taxpayers. So ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, fellow residents, thank you for being here today. I'd like to speak to you directly, the hard-working taxpayers of St. Joseph County, to provide clarity and context about changes in property assessments, and to share how my office is working to ensure fairness, transparency, accuracy in every step of the way. First, let's address the core reason why many of you have seen changes in your assessed property values. There are four main factors behind the shift. One, COVID-19 pandemic significantly disrupted our housing market, driving prices to unrealistic values and stalling economic development. Inflation and rising construction costs have increased the market value of properties across the board. And perhaps most importantly, the Department of Local Government Finance raised cost tables that will reflect 4 years of inflationary values. 4 years of inflationary values were put on the taxpayers in a single year. Additionally, for decades, data was inaccurately collected, not reflecting true market value. So for the past 2 years, I've been correcting the historical imbalance and ensuring assessments reflect today's market conditions. It is also important to clarify that the state of Indiana promulgates the rules for which assessors must apply market value. My office does not create those rules. We are required to follow and implement what the state determines is fair and equitable. While we do everything we can to apply those rules fairly and accurately at the local level, the broader framework is beyond our control. Recently, the state passed Senate Bill 1 in response to concerns from communities across Indiana. While I appreciate the effort to improve the system, I believe the bill doesn't go far enough in addressing the issues that matter most to taxpayers, like transparency, assessment stability, and fairness. That is why we continue to advocate for smarter, more effective solutions from state leadership. We've heard your concerns. We understand the process can feel confusing and at times frustrating. But I want to assure you, we are not ignoring the challenges. In fact, we're facing them head on. Over time, the property assessment system has grown increasingly complex. It's been shaped by shifting policies, limited tools, and lack of consistent investment. While no one moment or decision created the problems we see today, the result has been a process that sometimes feels inconsistent or out of touch with the real-world experiences from property owners. Since day one in my office, my team had been working to turn that around. Before we can fix the system, we must first understand it and help you understand it as well. That means clarity, clearing up misinformation, being transparent about how assessments work, and explaining how external factors like economic growth, rising costs, supply shortages, and yes, inflation affect property values. We're also addressing long-standing challenges within the assessor's office. For decades, outdated tools, minimal staffing, and limited resources held this office back. That is changing. We've modernized systems, prioritized staff training, and brought in new tools and expertise to improve accuracy and service. In late 2023, we launched the Engage portal, giving you real-time access to property information and making appeals easier and more transparent. We streamlined internal processes, improved communication, and trained our team to provide more responsive people-first experience. Even so, we're not waiting on others to help us fix what we can do ourselves. Rebuilding trust is our top priority, and that starts with listening. You have a role in this, you have a role in the process, and your voice matters. That is why I'm inviting you to join us at one of the 4 upcoming annual town hall events where we'll dive deeper into the topics I've shared today and answer your questions directly. This isn't just about policy or numbers, it's about people. It's about ensuring that every resident feels heard, respected, and fairly treated. We're not promising an overnight change. We inherited a system that had errors. We inherited over 20,000 appeals or 13,000 appeals and going into 20,000 appeals in the next year. But what we are promising is thoughtful, meaningful reform and firm commitment to doing the right thing together. With that, I want to thank you for your time, your engagement, and your belief in a more accountable and transparent future for St. Joseph County. With that said, I'm going to bring up a couple people, and then I'm going to open the floor to questions. So I want to bring up Shannon Shaw, who you first met. She is my operations manager. I want to bring up Blaine Bowen, who is my commercial data team leader. And I want to bring up Alton Neary, who is my chief deputy. With that said, I'll open the floor to the media for questions.
Yeah, so we talked to several people who appealed last year, and now they're seeing their appeals or their new assessments that are almost double, maybe even higher. Can they appeal again, and will there be a change, or are they just stuck?
Well, no, they're not stuck. You can file an appeal every year, but I want to clarify that a little bit for you. We've had, since 2022, we saw significant raises in land values. We've had people that have been filing appeals. In fact, almost 80% of our appeals have had an appeal since 2022. And so we've been carrying those appeals over. So what I heard from the taxpayers was we haven't had much engagement with the assessor's office. So the reason why this has taken a lot longer is we engaged on a process where we meet every taxpayer either through the phone or we come out to their property, and we want to get the information correct. We need to work with the taxpayers to make sure, do you have a finished basement? Do you have a finished attic? Do we have the square footage correct? And some of the things we can't see because it's in the house. So that communication piece was missing, and that's why it's taking much longer. So for those people who they got a judgment later in the year, it was too late for it to be reflected on the Form 11 that they see that just came out.
So a lot of folks appealed their assessments last year, didn't hear for about a year about their new assessments. How can we reassure them that they're gonna hear about this appeal in a timely manner this time?
Well, so here's the issues I briefly talked about. Day one, I inherited 13,000 appeals. That's day one. I've only been here 2.5 years. By June of the same year, we had roughly around another 6,000 appeals. So automatically, we were trying to adjust to almost 20,000 appeals, which is almost a third of the county. So it takes time to get through those appeals process. But I am telling you that we are committed to answering those appeals. We are not throwing them in a box somewhere and saying we're not going to give you an answer. Now, I will tell you, the taxpayer has their rights, and if they don't hear from us within 180 days, they can ask to have that sent to the County Tax Board of Appeals. I am asking that the taxpayers have patience with me so that we can give them the very best service and make sure that we have the information correct so that the comparables that we are using are indeed accurate of the market.
We've talked to professionals in the past who said that you at an industry event in January say that people who won their assessments in 2024, payable 2025, should not expect any increase or no increase for the value for 2 years. Do you dispute that now?
So no, that's not completely accurate. What I had said was if you had filed an appeal, you may have the potential of it being carried over for 3 years. There is an IBTR ruling that says that if you win an appeal, depending on where it's at in the cyclical reassessment, it could potentially be carried over. Now, with that said, there's other things that happen. So if they make capital improvements to their property, that changes whether or not we can carry the appeal over. If we do a land study or there's a significant change within the market that is driven, then we have to relook at the market. This year, again, the DLGF had put into place cost tables that were reflective of 4 years of inflationary values over the last 4 years. So it changes the dynamic. The thing about market value, it's about today, not 2, 3, 4 years ago, but what is your house worth in today's market?
You had talked about switching your kind of methodology, right, from like this front foot to square foot measurement. Are those changes still happening? Is that playing a role here at all?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So here's why the appeal process works so well for the taxpayers. Keep in mind, we have 118,000 parcels, and although I would love to go out to every property every day it's virtually almost impossible. So the appeal process gives us an inside look from the taxpayers that something's happening within a particular market. In this case, in New Carlisle, we had a particular neighborhood where we found that the land values were not correct. It wasn't done intentionally, it was just that the interpretation maybe of how it was applied wasn't correct. So when I took a look at what was the best way to assess land, it was through the acreage or square foot portion of land. Because in that process, it gives influences for properties or land that's not perpendicular or is oblong or has a triangular shape. I wanted to make sure that there was something that the taxpayers can understand, and when we look at the numbers, acreage and square footage is the best way. Now, as a result of that, next year we will be applying that to every neighborhood in St. Joseph County because I believe it's in the best interest of the taxpayer. I am also looking at, just so you know, neighborhoods have not been delineated since 1995. So going into next year, not only will we be looking at redrawing the boundary lines from the neighborhoods, but we're also going to redo the land study to make sure that we have the very best land rates that we possibly can to bring in the accuracy better. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do it this year because by law, I have to issue a land order. That is going in, we'll be putting in place this year.
Just going off that with the New Carlisle subdivision, are there any other issues that are impacting numbers elsewhere?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I'm glad you bring that question up. We have a dynamic in St. Joseph County that's probably different than some other places. First of all, the University of Notre Dame is expanding its footprint. They're buying up properties and they're tearing them down and then they're rebuilding these mega homes. That impacts homes, especially in the older neighborhoods where people have been there for a long, long time. Listen, it's not lost on me how important property assessments are to taxpayers. It hits them in the pocket. I understand that. But we have to make sure that we get the information correct. And it's also important that the taxpayers work with us so we can come to an agreement on what is fair and equitable. Any other questions? Do I have any questions from the audience? With that said, I want to say thank you to the media for coming out today. Again, we'll be having 4 town hall meetings. In the meetings, we'll get into depth on some of the things that are impacting particular neighborhoods. And then we'll also have our staff there so that the staff can pull up their property record cards at the town hall meetings and we can start to talk to them about some of those issues they might have with their property. I want the taxpayers to know this. I don't care about the state's budget or the county's budget or anything that has to do with budgetary requirements. Only thing I care about is making sure that we protect our citizens and we make sure that the assessments are as fair as I can possibly get within the framework of what the state allows me to do. With that, I thank you and appreciate you guys coming out. Have a good day.